Hi, everyone. Welcome to the January 27th, 2022 Flux Dev Call. All right. I'm pasting a link to the meeting notes here. And I'm going to go ahead and, oh yeah, it looks like someone, oh, all right. We already have this set up. Let's take a moment to see if we have any agenda items. Does anyone have anything on their mind that they'd like to talk about in addition to what's happening on the way to GA? I do. I'm going to add one right now. Okay. Well, yeah, let's go ahead and get into this other stuff. And if you have any thoughts, or even if you just want to have a more of an informal conversation at some point, just go ahead and speak up. Pop your your topics in the chat, or ideally in the document, the meeting notes document. But if you can't do that for some reason, you're not excluded, just pop it in the chat or just let us know. Okay, who wants to take, let's see, the round of what's happening on the way to GA? I could if someone else doesn't want to. Okay, I can help a bit. Probably what's coming first is, at least I would think, is Flux graduation from as a CNCF graduated project. There was a round of feedback a while back. I know this is not directly related to GA, but I'm just going to say this first because that's what I know most. There was a round of feedback from the TOC. The bar is very high, I think. I'm not saying it wasn't always high, but the actual criteria has changed over time. I only know that being a maintainer of another graduated project from a while back, and so it's good. So this is somewhat related only because one of the criteria for graduation, as we are addressing some of the feedback we got, or that the Flux project got. It's not secret. It's totally open. There's a blog post on it on the security review, and there are public issues on in the Flux 2 project, describe it, and the Flux website project. And there's a whole project board just on addressing the feedback we got. And in general, it was very good. But there are some things we need to do, for example, under documentation, and all of that is there. I'll go ahead and link the project board in just a moment. So the reason that this is related is because one of the most important things that we need for GA is to address the multi-tenancy question, to make sure that, Flux has supported multi-tenancy. Many people are using it. It's a very good model, but it was also, but the most important part for now for having a stable, backwards compatible project is to make sure that when people install Flux using the defaults, and what we encourage folks to do for multi-tenancy is is not going to break on people moving forward once we reach GA if we change the strategy. So I'll go ahead and link to that. And then we do have, I'll go ahead and link to the Flux roadmap, just for, most people on this call probably know this, but it's also people maybe listening to this later. So I'll pop those in. And I think that's all I have for what's going on with GA. It's quite far along. Stefan has, and others have been working very hard on RFCs that address different aspects of this. So I'll also link to, or maybe someone else can help me. Now I have 3 links to post.
I can
also
provide some comments. Sorry about being more quiet earlier on, but I had to switch context in my head from the previous meeting I had to this one. So we are preparing a new release, which will introduce a couple of flags to the controllers to provide an intermediate kind of configuration option between what is proposed in the RFCs and, well, a more secure default, which we want to offer users earlier on. The details on this are in in issue 2308. And it will basically introduce a new flag to configure a default service account for all objects being reconciled by a certain controller. The expectation is that if a non-default service account is defined, that this service account is then present in the namespace. And if you define a kubeconfig and a service account name at the same time, it will attempt to use the service account, which is defined combined with the kubeconfig. So if you're targeting a remote cluster, it's expected to exist. And this will make the default setup more secure, as in the controller, you can basically configure the controller such that it doesn't use the controller service account as a default to take certain actions, but rather take the, well, configured service account. And once that's in, we will continue on working on the RFCs.
If I may, I have a quick question about that. So currently the behavior is if you specify a kubeconfig and a service account, the service account is like disregarded, right? It's not taken into account. Is that right?
From the top of my head, I would say yes.
Okay. And then in the future, it would be taken into account and would have to exist on the remote cluster.
That's correct, yes.
I see. Is that kind of a backwards?
No, it's breaking.
Like a breaking change? Breaking change, yeah. I see, okay.
That's why we want to introduce it early on, because it hooks into the proposed RFCs basically. So better to make the change now and already start breaking people things than have one gigantic leap forward. But I'm wondering how many users are actually targeting remote clusters in combination with, I don't know, defining a service account here and there.
Thanks, Hida. Yeah, that's great. So I posted most of the links except for the links to the RFCs, which I'm about to do right now. And here they are. So also, this is not really exactly a cry for help, but more like a, hey, if anyone wants to help with adding the notes in the meeting notes, that might be kind of helpful too. Okay, so I did skip ahead a little bit. I definitely don't want to now. Hey, let's switch topics. Like,
Oh, another option I forgot about.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, please. Yeah.
The other flag that's going to be introduced is to allow disabling cross namespace references.
Right.
Which as opposite effect will probably also mean, but I'm not sure, that most objects that are present do not allow for cross references will start allowing cross references, but don't pin me on it. I haven't been actively working on this part.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have a description of that. I think that was added. Let me just make sure.
It's issue 2337.
Oh, thanks.
And the default service account issue is 2340.
Yeah, here we go. Thank you. And so it's kind of a lot to. The cats are very active this morning. Yeah, it's kind of a lot to read, to continue to dive through all of the RFCs, but the issues I think are pretty good summaries. And let me just take one peek to see if that made it onto the security documentation landing page. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I put a couple of notes on this like top level landing page for folks, and I would love about the cross namespace references that Hida was just mentioning. And I would love any feedback on this. Basically, it's the first footnote here. So I'd love any, whether now or later, we're working on adding additional information to this page as a top level, very high level introduction to people who are concerned or interested in security that are coming to understand Flux. So there are more topics to add, and we have another issue about when we should add each topic, how critical they are. I believe that we don't have any other critical topics to add. But this has the cross namespace reference note that I think describes it at a bit of a high level. So Sanskar, how you doing? You got your hand raised.
Yeah, this one. I couldn't find the unmute button. Yeah, so Paolo has been working on statically building the controllers, and it's been going fine. I've been helping him, but today we kind of hit a blocker where we are having issues with running it on Mac. It works on Linux fine, and like everything is pretty much fine. But the thing is that, and we Paolo is here, amazing, cool. I think Paolo can explain it way better than I can. Paolo, if you can hear me, I was just like trying to explain to them about the static building stuff and how it's failing on Mac.
Oh yeah, sure. So basically, well, two things. So one of the things we're introducing is statically building all the controllers that depend on libgit 2. libgit 2 in itself has a bunch of dependencies like OpenSSL and like libz and so on. And one challenge that we had in the past is that we depended on dynamically linked libraries to kind of test. So we would test that on your machine with whatever version and configurations built by your operational system. But when we build them, it would be potentially a different operational system. So imagine you have macOS and we're building that on, I think it was Debian before. So now what we're doing is we statically build everything. The issue then is to make sure that we allow people to test on their own machines with the exact same version they're shipping. We managed to fix this for AMD 64. I'm going through some issues on ARM64 Linux, but I think I should get to the top of that in a few, well, hours. But on top of that, we also have the issue with Mac. So we're still kind of working around that, but we should be able to get to the bottom of it. But the key thing is give that certainty that whatever we test against is actually what we're shipping. And on top of that, everything is statically built. So we can, ship really light images with less dependencies and less vulnerabilities as well. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, Paulo, I have a question, not as a moderator at this point. I saw that there are various, the progress is coming along really well, I think, with the developer contribution readmes for the different components of Flux. And for everyone else, I mean, for instance, how Flux is multi-component based and it spans different repos for that reason. And so in order to build each of them, there are somewhat different instructions sometimes for them because they have different dependencies. Is that related to what you're talking about, Paulo, or which, if so, which component is having trouble being built and running tests on Mac?
Yeah, so basically this is just regarding source controller and image automation controller. And both of them depends on libgit2. And at the moment, we ask folks to install those things on their machine. In terms of macOS, I think we check if OpenSSL is installed. So all of that will go away. For any people trying to do a make test, what they would do is they'll do make tests. They don't need to have any dependency on their machine. We will deal with that for them. And the great thing about that as well is transparent. Ideally, people should be able to just jump into a box that has, I don't know, Golang and some little dependencies, which would be basic for Golang or Kubernetes development, and they can just run with it. They don't need to have anything else.
When you say statically linked, do you mean that those dependencies will be temporarily downloaded, not in their global, not in sort of user local bin or user bin or something like that? They'll be downloaded locally so that there won't be any cross-contamination with other project or other local development or anything bad, and then the test will use those. Is that what you mean?
That's exactly the approach. And at the moment we're downloading those images from the container image that we base our kind of controllers, but soon the idea is to actually release those static libraries on another project we have on Fluxity, and then we can just download that once and then only update every time that we're changing what we're linking against. So yeah, that should be fairly straightforward.
That's great. Okay.
The only thing is that I don't know if it's a blocker to 0.26. Is it?
It shouldn't be. I think if worse comes to worse, what we can do is just build things on Docker.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and then we fix that because everything else is working as it should. The only impact at the moment is that make test wouldn't work for people on Mac. But again, I think we don't want it working if it's broken, if you know what I mean. Like, for example, we don't want to depend on their own dependencies, but potentially they're not really simulating what we're shipping. So that actually, not really adding the value they were supposed to add.
Got it. That's awesome.
But we will try to fix that anyway as soon as possible.
Yeah, what I think you will end up with is building in a container.
Well, in theory, we should be able to.
The problem is, when I initially did this whole refactor thing, in which we kind of finally set up the outline of the whole building thing, my initial idea was also to ship the build set of dependencies within the kind of abstracted container we have to go along with libgit2 thing. But then I quickly ran into the issue that you can prepare certain things for macOS. And then I ended up with using the same script as that's being used in the Docker container, basically, to build it locally on the user's machine to make it adhere to all the weird things macOS wants it to adhere to. But that's the thing you kind of dropped, if I have been following your changes correctly. And I don't see how you can create macOS compatible static library dependencies, which are going to work with macOS with the XX toolset we're currently using, which is completely designed to work with Linux.
Yeah, so my approach on that is leverage the Docker Hub macOS runners to then statically build and release into the Golang with libgit 2 project, and then we download from there the libraries built for macOS on macOS. And then what we do is, well, pretty much what we discussed earlier that you mentioned around using AMD on Mac. So we pretty much force Golang to cross compile on using AMD, but it's still on Darwin. And in theory, that should work. The only question is, as you said, is make sure that we can build those statically linked libraries, which is a test that, Sanskar and I are doing. So hopefully we get to the bottom of that sooner rather than later.
Gotcha. Okay, did anyone else have any questions specifically about the road to GA? I had mentioned earlier that there is an overlap with the graduation questions now, because we're getting rather close. But that's the next agenda item, is to take a look at that project board a bit and see where folks can help out. Do we want to jump there, or are there other questions about this part first? All right, cool. Well, so just to, I had linked to it earlier, but here we go. Chris, awesome, yes. Well, hey, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if you end up having time, maybe you can even help test some of the things that are being worked on or contributed in some way. For
I would happily sacrifice my Macs for y'all. I have Intel and ARM, so we can use that as we see fit.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
The Chris Short cloud.
The Chris Short cloud is for real.
Yeah, I had to fetch my 12-year-old MacBook, which is running like an dual core Intel Core 2 Duo to like test the PR.
Yeah, that's an i7, but it's like 5 years old. So I mean, it's better than
that was 12 years old. Like
low end
when I was
stuff.
12 years old, it got me through college somehow.
Yeah, exactly. This all it does now is store our pictures. So I'm happy to do development work.
Just make sure your pictures get backed up somewhere.
They are, and backed up locally and in the cloud.
Why did I have to say that, Chris?
I don't know. I mean, you're
I don't
talking to
know.
an ops guy by trade.
I know. I'm talking to disaster recovery extraordinaire.
Right.
Military.
Been through some big ones.
Right, exactly. But that was just for fun. Yeah, okay, so the next is to take a piece, just a pic of this, and wow, I'm not feeling very well. I'm feeling pretty sick, but take a quick look at the audit follow-up project board. And we don't have to be overly bureaucratic about this and go through every piece, but it would be nice to take a look at a few of them and see if there are other folks in the call who have things to contribute, because the faster we get there, the better it will be for the project. So, let's go ahead and take a look at what I wanted to do is ask. I think this is a question for Paolo. but I could be wrong. I wanted to ask about the in progress column. The very first one is the fuzzing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so pretty much all this work around the static building is due to fuzzing. So we managed to, add fuzzing to all the controllers apart from source controller and image automation controller, especially because of all these library dependencies. So now we fixed like the static building is all working fine. We just want to make tests work again on both projects, and then I'll be able to get back to this. But to be honest, now that we sort that problem, this should be quite straightforward to resolve. The third item that the first one, the Finnish fuzzer integration, is actually related to the upstream Google project, the OSS fuzzer. Fuzz, which pretty much what they do is they connect to all these repositories and do long-running tests, fuzzing tests. So I already updated to some of them, but as soon as we finish the other two, the idea is to enable this long-running fuzzing across all the projects. So again, that should be fairly straightforward now, given where we are. In terms of the contributing around the regression tests and good examples, which is the fourth item in progress. Well, actually, it's the fifth one, sorry. Pinky's looking into that. She sent me something yesterday, still haven't had time to follow up on that. I will do that once this release is out of the way, but yeah. But I'm pretty sure this is on the works. She has a more PR there, so if anyone could have a look, that would be brilliant. And the release cycle information and expectation, we also have APR from Pinky, which again, if anyone could have a look, I plan to have a look on that as well as soon as I finish off with these problems. But yeah, that's pretty much that from the in progress stuff. On the to-do list, I think we have the standardized login, which is part of a piece of work that Sunny and Ide are working around documenting, standards and how to apply them across development of controllers across the project. I understand that we have a draft of that documentation. It's not released yet. But once that is released, the idea is to pretty much follow up those recommendations across the controllers. And to be honest, there was just like 5 or 6 instances that the auditors picked. So again, once we have really well defined the standard, it should be straightforward for us to get to the bottom of that. Then we have 2 other items. One, I believe, is with Kingdom, which is the end-to-end processing Flux. Kingdom, are you there? Would you be able to give us a quick update on that?
Yeah, I have a draft PR open. I can put a link in the doc. It's marked WIP right now because it's not complete, but the structure is there. This is basically a clone of a document that we found from the Envoy project that we liked. Welcome any feedback. If there's anything you really think I should cover, feel free to call it out on the PR.
Awesome. I'll definitely have a look on that. Well, and the last one is pretty much the blurry line between Flux and GitOps Toolkit. And I think the last comment there is with you, Scott. I'm not really sure the status on that. This one's got, I'm just sharing here, 587.
Yes. Yeah, so issue 587. Oh, thank you, Paolo. So there was a somewhat older PR from September that I made that I believe looks like, I think we just, oh, I see. So actually I missed this 3 days ago. Daniel suggested, hey, all the feedback's addressed, and let's go ahead and merge this. I just need to squash it and do so. This is it. I was going to ask if folks would give feedback, and that is still valuable, but I won't at this point. I'm probably not going to wait for that. So it's what it is a just for anyone who wasn't able to click on the link yet, the PR is titled Flux Language Style Guide, and the reason for this is because some people initially are confused at, well, what is the GitOps toolkit? How is that different from Flux? And that was also a question by the auditors or by the security auditors. So this clarifies not only that, but all of the other uses of Flux as a Flux when we talk about Flux, and helps distinguish between them. So if you do have feedback about this, either before or after it's merged, that would be great. If it's after it's merged, feel free to open up another PR to change it, or even just please reach out and I'll be happy to do that.
I think that's it. And so those are all the points around the audit follow-up.
That's exciting. Thanks, Paulo.
No worries.
So I put one item on here, which is to just have a short conversation about, or get feedback from everyone about OCI support in the source controller. And if you all haven't been following, there's an announcement that OCI support has moved out of experimental in Helm into a full feature, and 3.8.0 was released earlier this week. A lot of really amazing people spent blood, sweat, and tears for years getting this to happen. And then the final push I led with a really awesome crew of people, including I contributed to, but just really, really awesome group of folks who are dedicated to getting it finished. So now that that's finished, it's relevant for Flux because it now unblocks us from adding OCI support to Flux for Helm. I think so far the idea is that, well, there are several ideas, including ideas about re-architecting parts of Flux for the Helm support, but there are also other suggestions, like Lee made on one of the issues that I don't have handy in front of me right now, but we can, if someone can find it, that's great. Otherwise, I can link to it later. Lee Capelli was saying, suggesting that we go ahead and add the support using the architecture that we have, and then save re-architecting for later, because this is such an important feature for users. I think I might I don't know, Hida, if you're still able to speak, but I would love your feedback on the value of this as you've seen it from requests from end users.
The problem I see at present, by having only quickly looked at the final way Helm likes to work and what we currently have in the source controller, is that Helm, of course, has an assumption that you are logged in using Docker. So I think it reuses your Docker credentials to authenticate to where's the OCI registry. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're not entirely wrong, but I think it's my understanding is a bit different there. That that Helm relies on the ORAS project, the OCI registry. Anyway, the ORAS project, which does support Docker auth as a fallback. So there's an SDK function that allows for that. What it does is it accepts you to pass an array of configs, of auth configs. It is Docker style, I suppose you could say, that basically it's the OCI config file. And it does auto discovery of Docker if other files that are passed either aren't passed or don't match first.
Yes, so in any case, you would need a credentials file.
Yes, correct.
So
Right, and
the problem I see at present is that source control is designed in such a way that you have an Helm chart object, and a Helm chart object can refer to another source, either a Helm repository or a Git repository or a bucket, for which it uses to either fetch the source. For a Git repository, we already have a copy of the source, which is a separate artifact, and then unpackage that artifact and create a chart out of that. Or in the case of a Helm repository, it uses the credentials which are attached to the Helm repository object, and then uses that to authenticate towards the Helm repository it's trying to pull the chart from. The problem I see with the introduction of OCI is that we don't have an object to tie the OCI credentials to. We do have a PR which introduces kind of an alpha support or experimental support for OCI, which would then give us an object to use as kind of the credentials base. But without that PR being merged, we don't have such thing. So basically what my next steps would be, as soon as I have time, which may take some time, due to other refactors I'm finalizing on the source controller, is that we need to take the contents of that PR, see what we can reuse from that PR and how it would fit into a combination of the Helm chart referring to the object that's being introduced in the PR, or if anything would be missing from the perspective of Helm to get there. In any case, from a high level point of view, we basically need to just see if the bits fit together, and if they don't, come up with an alternative plan or changes to the PR and how they could work together, because it makes little sense to me to, I don't know, create some other awkward way of getting those credentials to the Helm chart if we are already have a PR stage to introduce another type of OCI support. So it's better to band the two good solutions together than to go two different paths, basically.
My personal opinion is I could not agree more with that. Ultimately, the SDK does make references in the Helm SDK does make references to repositories when installing from OCI, but that's only because that's only for backwards compatibility with those function signatures. There is no ultimately using OCI as a with or without Flux, right? Like, let's just say Helm purely, or using Helm SDK, or using Helm CLI. There's no if you're installing a chart from OCI, you're really not referencing a repository at all. So you know how if you do a Helm install -- help, there are listed 5 different ways to install a Helm chart. And you can see in the docs as well, not just the CLI if you're purely an SDK user. I think it's the 4th way, I believe, is from absolute URL. And that's the only compatible installation method with Helm OCI. So Flux already supports that, but it just doesn't use, it just doesn't, like you said, it doesn't currently have general OCI support. So that's what I see, and I agree with you. I would love to prioritize this and make this happen sooner than later. And if anyone else is interested, I would love for us to connect on that. Okay, well, that's the last agenda item that we have on our list. Does anyone else have anything else they want to bring up, or do we just go ahead and get some minutes back to our life? What do you all think?
I like minutes.
But then you won't get to see my cats for another 15 minutes climbing all
I have
over.
another 40 commits to rebase, so I would prefer my minutes back.
I feel your pain, man.
I'm on six out of 46, so maybe by the end of the day I'm done. But
Gosh.
yeah, I said I'm finishing another thing, which basically is a rewrite of a lot of internals of the source controller, so it's a whole mess. But hey, all for improvements.
Kid, if
Good
you
on
need
you.
assistance with those rebases, I would be happy to assist.
Oh no, it's a long chain of one chain upon another chain, so it's only going to be me who is going to be solving this.
I see. Okay. Bad
Is
luck.
there anything that you could use help with, Hida? Especially given that you just got a volunteer.
You know what my problem is with getting help from people, and that's no offense to people. Providing the information to have people unload things from your plate also costs time, is a thing that I have
Yes.
recently discovered, especially if you have like 4 people around you doing tasks. So no, at present not. I just need to dig myself out of this mess I'm in, and then we can continue with clean slates and less on my plate. So no, I think everything is fine for now. I just need to finish the rebase and then get another release candidate out, which is something I can use help with. Max, I will reach out to you about that because it touches like, are you a heavy user of like Slack notifications and stuff from a notification
Not yet.
controller? Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh,
We may be in the future though.
Yeah, okay. I need someone who is who already has like all alerts set up and doesn't want to be spammed.
That's me.
Okay, King. Then I have a very nice. I will call. I will write you a message later.
Super. This seems like a good time to plug the bug scrub, which is this time next week. If you've never been to Flux Bug Scrub, everyone's welcome.
They're excellent, and you know, we've got some other folks who are mentoring people from around the world that are I think Kingdom, have you worked that out yet to get that group of folks?
Just open one thread.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Anyway, it could be just one person who shows up. It could be, you know, half a dozen people or a dozen people who show up, but it's a really.
Yesterday we had 6. It was great.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, they're really good. I can't recommend the bug scrubs that Kingdom leads enough. And also Kingdom has been really great at setting up, not just trying to butter you up, Kingdom. I'm actually, this is like a genuine compliment here. Really good at setting up tooling and processes so that others potentially could lead these bug scrubs. But I really appreciate that you continue to do that for now.
Thank you.
Okay, and if anyone does want to help with things that they don't have something on, if you're like, hey, I want to help with something, that project board, project, let's see, under the Fluxity.org project 5 for the audit follow-up, there are items in there that you could help with. So please take a look at those, because the sooner we get there, the sooner we are all clear for the feedback that we had that was blocking us from graduation. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.
See ya. Thanks.